Okay. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us tonight. I really do appreciate it.
Happy to
Um,
be.
I'm letting some people in as we talk. Here, let me move this over here a little bit. Um, am I correct? And do you pronounce your name Bafik?
Yeah, Buffy.
Bafik. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us. We have quite a few parents that are interested in this tonight, and we're really excited for you to join us. And um, thank you for being here with
Yeah.
us.
No, happy to be here. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, how you doing, Bhavik?
Well, how are you?
Good, good.
I'm going to give everybody a few more minutes and then we'll just start admitting them as they come in. Um,
Hey, Kelly.
You all probably don't know, but I know Kelly very well. We're really good friends.
how do you know her?
We work
Well, she
together.
abandoned me, and then she abandoned me. That's really how.
She did. That's a
We worked
loss,
together when
Rafiq.
we
That's a
were
loss.
brand
Definitely.
new lawyers for like, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, and then
And then you abandoned me.
I bailed. That's true.
That's
Oh
true.
my gosh. Okay. Well, so far we have six people in here. So, Bhavik, I'm Terry O'Daniel. I'm Executive Director for the Academy of St. Louis. And so we're really glad to have you here with us. We have monthly speaker series for our parents that, um, address issues in which they really do need information about. It's really hard for them, and for us as well, to be honest with you, to navigate all the services in which our families need. And
Sure.
so we started these once a month, and you were recommended by Lynn. So therefore, we wanted to make sure we had you available if when you had the time to talk to our families about this very important subject. So I think at this point, since let's see,
Is everybody that's on the ones that I can see on the screen, or is there a list beyond that?
that is who we have right now. And I will tell you, Vic, some of these are, people in our community, as you're well aware, since you do what you do, a lot of them have, a lot of things going on with their kids, a lot of therapies, a lot of just so many things going on at all times. So, sometimes we have a lot of people that show up and sometimes it doesn't work, but, it looks like more people will be getting on. We also have a propensity to have a couple, people 5 or 10 minutes late, which you're probably used to, I'm sure.
No, no worries at all. The reason I was asking is, to be honest, it's refreshing to have a more intimate group than a larger group because we can get much more personalized to what everybody wants to hear and what everybody wants to talk about
Sure.
rather than a presentation of sort of theory based, here's the concepts, and it may or may not exactly apply to an individual. So I'm never, I'm glad you're recording it and that other people can hear, but I'm never scripted. So it's one of these things where I'm good to do this any way you want. Like I can just start presenting, or I can literally like ask everybody what are they interested in hearing about, and try to address that. I mean, I really, Terry, it's your sort of your show, so whatever you want me to do.
Okay, well, I think that we should probably start off with you just telling us, what you do, and what the whole concept is, because a lot of parents are not really familiar with it. So I think in order to familiarize them with that, and then I'm sure they'll have questions afterwards, might be the way to go. And I feel like we should probably start right now, just because it is a little past 7, and we are recording it. So if anybody wants to hear the very beginning of it, we can certainly make sure that they receive that. So um, take it away.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, just as an introduction, I'm Bhavik Patel. I'm an attorney here in St. Louis. Work at a firm called Sandberg Phoenix, and sort of one of my specialized areas is I do a lot of special needs planning. And so to maybe set the stage, what is special needs planning? And usually special needs planning is centered around getting a plan put together where parents or, guardians or whatever the case may be is sort of creating a plan that allows for their loved one with disabilities to have the opportunity to take advantage of the resources that are available to them and not inadvertently get a child disqualified from those benefits when they might be needed, and then making sure that those benefits are optimized and making sure there's just really no disruption once you sort of get on that best plan that fits your loved one. And that's what I call special needs planning. But it involves estate planning. It involves understanding public benefits. It involves the potential creation of special needs trusts, if that's the right piece of the puzzle for your family. And so that's what I do day in, day out, and have done for a very, very long time. So I'm very happy to just give you a little bit of an overview, maybe as a presentation style first. And then I hope this becomes interactive, because I already spent all day talking, so it's better if it's interactive and we're having a dialogue and kind of answering what it is that's on your mind. But if you're doing any kind of special needs planning, the foundational basis of information anybody needs is to figure out what the heck is going on with public benefits. And how do you qualify for public benefits? What are the sort of rules of it? And how do you make sure once you get it, you don't lose it? And it's very confusing, and it can be very overwhelming to sort of navigate those waters. So I've got a little bit of a PowerPoint I'm going to share. I think I can share the screen. I don't know. Terry, do you know?
You should be able to.
Okay. I'll share a screen here in a second, and I'll go through a few slides, which I think I've condensed to sort of a foundational understanding of public benefit eligibility. And I think once you understand which benefits are there for you, potentially, not the comprehensive list, but the general level, and how you get it, then we can layer on top of it like, hey, watch out for doing these types of things, because these types of things might cause you to jeopardize those benefits. And then we'll layer on top of that, here are some things that I think you could do to make sure you're avoiding those pitfalls. And that'll probably be our time today, but either way, I'll try to talk in a way where we have time to have some conversations. Does that sound like a good plan, Terry?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen and just, it says host disabled my screen sharing. So I think if you're able to enable it, then I'll be able to share it.
Yeah, we thought we had this all set up. Let's see. Screen sharing, screen recording. Okay, hold on one second.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that, I can at least really set the stage in terms of public benefits, and then I'll get into the PowerPoint. There's two types of benefits that are, I think, sort of categorized, and these are sort of my labels to them: private-based benefits and then public-based benefits. When I say private-based benefits, I'm really just talking about what guardians and moms and dads are doing in their own private arena to be able to provide resources for their loved ones, either during their lifetime or upon their passing. I'm not going to talk about that, but I do encourage you to talk to advisors or people, professionals that you might be working with, to talk about like life insurance and things like that. I can't begin to tell you how important those types of resources could be after you're gone for your loved one. And when I do this presentation, I start calling my loved one Joey, just for simplicity. And so I'll keep referencing this imaginary Joey. And I've been doing it for so long now, like Joey's real in my head. But Joey is what we'll talk about. And so whatever you can do for Joey, as Joey's parents or guardians, savings, retirement, insurance, all of those types of things, I think is important to explore. But that's not really what the presentation's about. The presentation's going to be more about the public side of the benefits. And so still not working, so I'm just going to keep talking. So for public benefits, in general, there's sort of what I would also call two categories to that. I'm just getting my screen up here real quick. All right. Okay, and so in terms of public benefits, there are, again, two broad categories that I want to put in place here. I'm going to say there's public benefits that are benefits not based on financial need, and then there's benefits based on financial need. The most popular ones that we know of or we think of in this arena would be the benefits not based on financial need are things like Social Security, just good old-fashioned Social Security, the things that we all will get when we retire. Medicare, again, the typical thing we think of Medicare is once you reach a certain age, you'll get that health insurance. Special education is another example of benefits not based on financial need. And then there's the benefits that are based on financial need. Those are supplemental security income, known as SSI, and then Medicaid. And then there's others that we won't really get into today, but like food stamps or legal aid or housing subsidies or Section 8 housing and things like that. And so we won't really get into those. But let's start with, I'm going to see if I can share my screen again.
Yeah, I'm trying. Our tech person is in her car driving. And we set this up earlier, and we were 100% sure it was working. And now, of course, so she at this point is pulling over to the side of the road.
Oh,
it's all good.
We all know who that is, don't we?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's totally fine.
Yeah, it should simply just, it should share the screen, and it's for some reason it's not because we gave you but she's looking. So anyway, I'm sorry.
So everybody has the slides. They were in that email.
Yeah.
Today, so we can all just pull it up too.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, all good. So, and if I'm not looking at the screen now because I have it on the other screen, that's why I'm looking that way.
Yeah.
But anyways, I think it all starts in understanding public benefits. It all starts with SSI, supplemental security income, not to be confused by SSDI, because everybody seems to confuse those. But they are completely different. SSDI is actually in that first section I was talking about, which is benefits not based on financial need. SSI, or supplemental security income, is based on financial need. Mm-hmm. And so what is SSI? And it's basically a federal program that's administered by each state at the state level, and it provides monetary funding on a monthly basis based on the sufficient evidence of two things. One is proof of disability, and two is financial need. Now, some of you on this call might have older, like adult children. Some of you might have minor children. I'm going to guess maybe everybody has minor children. I don't know. Does that give maybe a feel for it?
Some of them do, yes.
Yeah. So when you're applying or thinking about SSI for Joey, oh, hey, I'm the host now.
Yes, you are.
I can share.
I did that on my own, lady. So pat on my back, which
So I will do that. Can you see the screen?
We got it.
Perfect. All right. Well, then we'll keep rolling. So as I said, when we're talking about SSI for minor children, meaning children under the age of 18, when we are looking at financial need, it is not only Joey's financial need, but it's also the parents' financial need. So it is, in just a blanket statement, it is very difficult to receive SSI for Joey if Joey's under the age of 18. A lot of the special needs planning I do really starts to focus on what happens when Joey's transitioning to adulthood and how, when he's 16 or 17, can we put some of our ducks in a row to really optimize Joey's chance to get the most optimized SSI benefit when he turns 18. Just because of the practicality of what the financial need test is, which I'll talk about in a second, but it's a pretty low threshold. And it's really just really hard when you start including the parents' assets to that threshold. Now, before we get into sort of the tests of SSI, I think it's important to understand what SSI money can be used for. It's very restricted money. People that do get on SSI can't just use it for whatever. It is intended to be used for sort of the absolute core essentials, very specifically for food and shelter, right? So it's not for a movie ticket, or just random shopping. I mean, it is meant for the core essentials of food and shelter. Okay, so let's jump into sort of the two big tests. And if there's any takeaway from today, it's going to be what I'm about to tell you. And I'm going to give it like a silly analogy to it too, because I'm a big fan of like visualizing what I'm saying so that you remember it a year from now and later on when you're applying it to your Joey. There are two tests that you have to talk about for public benefits: the resource test and then the income test. And here's my analogy. Imagine yourself in front of like a door, and on the other side of the door is benefits. And so you have to pass the resource test in order to get the door to unlock. And anytime you fail the resource test, the door will automatically lock back up. Then you go on to the income test to kind of figure out how wide the door should be open. But the income test doesn't matter if the door is locked. And so I just gotta, right? I mean, it's just a simple visual analogy for you to constantly remind yourself, oh, I gotta pass the resource test. So let's talk about what the resource test is. Maybe. All right. Cool. All right. So before we even go into the actual resource test, anytime I hear like a test and it has a name like resource test, first question I want to ask myself is, well, what's a resource? And so I want you to start this thought process of what is a resource to mean it's anything that can be converted to cash. Everything and anything is a resource. Now, remember, if Joey's under the age of 18, that's anything that Joey has and anything that mom and dad have. For most of this presentation, I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption we're going to talk about these things really becoming relevant when you get transitioned to adulthood. And so once Joey turns 18, it would be Joey's resources, not mom and dad's. And so anything that can be converted to cash. So really, I want you to start when you're thinking about the resource test to think it's everything that Joey owns. And then I'm going to walk back from that here in a second. But the test itself for SSI eligibility is that if Joey has resources in excess of $2,000 on the first day of the calendar month in which he applies. So today is October 12th. I'm Joey. I applied for this SSI benefit. They're going to look at all of my resources as of October 1. Okay. And if those resources are above 2,000, guess what's going on with the door? It stays locked. I can't get to the land of benefits. I can't go through the door because the door is locked. All right. So then, oh, by the way, just so you know, so I won't go back to a resource test for Medicaid, that threshold is a little bit higher. It's not that much higher, but as of 2023, it's $5,726. The reason I kind of put that in parentheses as like a little side note is because I really don't want you to think of that number because it's not the number I want you to default think of. I want you to only think of $2,000 because if you have 2,000, you're going to be eligible or less. Joey's going to be eligible for both. If you start to separate the two and it gets too confusing. So again, if we're trying to get a fundamental foundational understanding of public benefit eligibility, I want you to think of the resource test that Joey can't have more than $2,000 in resources. So everything is a resource, and I told you I was going to start kind of walking that back. There are certain exempt resources that will not count towards the $2,000 threshold. And the first of those exempt resources is a home. If Joey owned a home, and as long as he resided or lived in the home, then the value of that entire home will be excluded from the resource test. Now, as we kind of go through the rest of today's conversation, I don't want anyone to hear that to mean it's okay to leave the house to Joey. Because if Joey does get benefits, SSI and Medicaid, and then Joey passes away or Joey has to leave the home, and now he owns a house that he doesn't live in, it could disqualify. It will disqualify him from public benefits. So I do not encourage people to leave the home to Joey. There will be another strategy to deal with leaving the home that you want Joey to live in. But you do want to plan for what happens if Joey can't live in that house, or if Joey passes away, then Medicaid's going to attach a lien on the house and be able to recoup back whatever expenses it's incurred on Joey's behalf. And if you just didn't leave it to Joey and you left it in, let's say, a special needs trust, that wouldn't apply. You'd get the best of all worlds. Now, household goods, which they don't really focus too much on because it's really hard to prove who owns the iPad, right? But nonetheless, if Joey owns household goods that are altogether worth more than $2,000 in market value, then it will be included as a resource. So basically it's saying the first $2,000 of stuff Joey owns is excluded from the resource test. Again, I have never had any experience with SSI or Medicaid where they started to inventory what iPad and who owned the iPad or anything like that. So I wouldn't focus on it, but I'm going to give you the list I'm going through is like exhaustive. It's not an illustrative list. It's literally the only assets that are excluded from the resource test. So I'm giving you that comprehensive list right now. Because if I don't say that particular asset, then you have to assume it's a countable resource. The next one on the slide there, it's kind of a morbid one, but it's a prepaid funeral or a burial plot or a burial space for Joey that Joey owns that can have. Now, that sounds morbid, but it's actually quite an incredible rescue tool because, like, let's say Joey is on benefits and then all of a sudden comes into some money, like because, Aunt Betty died. And here we go. She left $10,000 to Joey. But $10,000 as an inheritance is over $2,000. Cash is not an exempt asset, so that is going to count, and then the door is going to close and the door is going to lock. And you've lost the benefits. So in order to expedite or to prevent that door from locking, you could literally take that $10,000 and turn around and prepay funeral. And now you've converted this disqualifying asset, cash, to an exempt asset, and the door has remained unlocked, and your benefits have been they remain uninterrupted. So even though it's kind of like a random thing here, prepaid funeral, um, it's a really effective tool if you needed to rescue a situation that causes the door to almost get locked. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is there a limit on that, Bhavik?
You know, I would say you should not go excessive. So there isn't a POMS limit, which means POMS is the actual regulatory body of law that Social Security and public organizations look at to govern these rules that I'm talking about. And it doesn't say a cap, but it does say reasonable. And so I kind of peg that at around 15,000.
Okay.
You know, even though it's not a bright line number, I think you're safe at 15,000 or less.
Bhavik, did you say the HOMS limit? What is that? HOMS or what is that?
Not limit, the POMS, POMS
Okay.
is the basically the procedural operations manual for Social Security and SSI and Medicaid and all those for the law that governs everything we're talking about.
Okay.
In fact, not to go on a little detour, but if any of you are working with attorneys because you have a relationship with them and you're wanting to do some special needs planning with them, that's a really great question to ask them to make sure they really have the expertise. Ask them if they're familiar with the POMS. And if they ask you what those POMS mean, then you know they're not an expert. But it has been a very effective strategy to weed out people that just say they can do anything versus who really knows what they're doing.
So procedures for SSI and Medicaid, both?
Yeah.
Benefits?
Mainly Social Security is really the best way to describe it.
Okay.
But there's so much overlap between all of that.
Yeah.
Another exempt resource is a car. A car that does not exceed a current fair market value of $4,500. So I joke around and say a relatively unsafe car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless the car is necessary for basically the physical transportation of the individual. Then there is no market value cap. So think about a handicap accessible van, for example. If the disability deals with a situation where we're dealing with physical disability, then you could retrofit or custom fit a handicap accessible van. Those things could be easily $150,000, and the entirety of that car that van would be exempt. But if it's just a regular car for someone that can drive, it's not necessary to get in and out of the car and things like that, then it's a $4,500 cap. And the reality is just don't have the car owned by Joey. I mean, these are Joey's resources, just to remind everybody of that distinction.
Would that include any type of, hand controls for someone who couldn't drive with their legs or their feet?
Yeah. It would.
That would increase that then.
Well, that would eliminate the $4,500 value cap. Absolutely. Okay, a few more assets that are exempt from the resource test. One is a life insurance policy that has a cash surrender value of less than $1,500. This would be life insurance owned by Joey. So, generally speaking, if your child is born of a disability, this probably doesn't apply to you. But if your child has been diagnosed post-birth and you're on top of your insurance game, you might have immediately got an insurance policy owned by your child because they get, the best ratings at that time without any underwriting or medical testing. And so you can get a very affordable life insurance policy for the life of your child and have it grow in value. Those would be the ones you'd be worried about. And just so you know, a term policy doesn't have any value. So it could be $10 million term policy, and it wouldn't disqualify Joey. But again, Joey's the one that had to own the policy. So this is a really odd, rarer type of exempt asset. So it just doesn't practically apply that way. Now, the next two are huge, in my opinion, and maybe foundationally what special needs planning is really all about. What the last one is. An ABLE account. So that was a law that got passed not too long ago, a couple of years back, that allowed Joey to save money essentially in his name in a particular savings vehicle called an ABLE account. And Joey could put up to, or anybody could put up to $15,000 total in any given year in savings for Joey in this ABLE account. And it can accumulate all the way up to $100,000. And as long as it's under $100,000, it won't lock the door. Okay. This to me is not a proactive planning tool. I don't think you should go and create an ABLE account and start putting money in it. That's your money for Joey. I think if Joey comes into money, it's a great reactive tool. Maybe even better than the prepaid funeral example, and put it in the ABLE account that way. Or if Joey works and is earning some money and he's not spending it all, but it's starting to accumulate, you could take that accumulated piece every month or every quarter and dump it into the ABLE account as a way to never get it above the $2,000 threshold. So it's a really effective tool for avoiding getting above the 2,000. But the reason I say you shouldn't put your money in the account for Joey is because it's not really adding any extra value. You just keep the money in your own pocket. It's the same thing. Except for why I don't want to proactively put it in the ABLE account is Medicaid has a right to attach a lien on that money too.
If they die.
Right? They can't attach the money that's in mom and dad's pocket. So to me, that's why it's a reactive tool to if you need to rescue a situation, not a proactive, let's put savings away for Joey.
Did I hear you say that it's a $15,000 minimum annually?
A year.
Is that per person? Like
So per recipient. So,
okay.
yeah. So like Terry, you can't put 15 in there and I put 15 in there.
Okay.
So on and so forth. It's a 15 a year for the recipient.
Okay. But if that recipient dies, then Medicaid can come back and put a lien on that funding. Okay.
If any funds are remaining.
Okay.
So if you have ABLE account money for Joey, I always tell clients that should be the first bucket you dip into to spend for Joey. Not mom and dad's bucket. Not any other bucket. That should be the spend because the ideal scenario would be at Joey's death, the ABLE account is zeroed out. Because then there would be no lien that could apply because there's no assets to lien. And then the last one is assets in a properly drafted special needs trust. That's the big one. I mean, the simple answer to most questions about how do I avoid the door being locked is by saying everything that is going to go to Joey should go in a special needs trust. Now, I don't encourage you to just create a special needs trust and start putting money in it during your lifetime. Because then you have a special needs trust that has to be administered. It has to file a tax return every year. There's no reason to make your lives harder than what it already is. There always tends to be this desire to want to get assets transferred over to Joey like right away. And there really hasn't been too many instances that I have come across where that gained some sort of benefit. I mean, in fact, it only created more administration and headache earlier than it needed to. I'd rather it just stay in your pocket. And then when you pass away, you leave it into the special needs trust. And you've eliminated years and years and years of potential tax returns and administration of that trust and haven't been able to get anything better for it.
What if like, for example, what if an uncle has a lot of wealth and wants to leave funds to my daughter when he dies?
Yeah.
Where should
One
he
of two things happened in that conversation. I guess first and foremost, the need for parents that have a Joey do not allow them to let private matters just be private matters, because the consequences are too grave, right? If you don't actually push the topic and discussion. And so I would encourage you to talk to the uncle. I would say, hey, that money can't go to Joey directly, so it needs to go to a special needs trust.
Mm-hmm.
Uncle, if you want, you can create the special needs trust inside your estate planning documents, or take it out of the uncle's equation altogether and say, listen, I might have a variety of family members that might want to leave Joey money. So I'm going to go ahead and take the initiative, and I'm going to create the special needs trust.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go tell all of them, hey, I've created this trust so it protects and preserves Joey's benefits. And here is how you need to send your inheritance to Joey, how you need to word it. And then like take the initiative and make it happen and make sure the family does it. Now, you might have 3 family members that want to leave Joey assets, and you've talked to all 3 of them, and 2 of them listen to you, and 1 doesn't. When that 1 doesn't and dies and then leaves that money, that's when we get to what I call the uh-oh moment, right? Because all of a sudden the door's about to shut, door's about to lock, and we need to rescue it. And then we think about ways to rescue it. There's always a way to rescue it. Okay. It might just be a bigger pain and you know what to have to do it, but there's always a way to rescue it. Whether it's putting some money in an ABLE account, paying for a prepaid funeral, or creating a different kind of special needs trust called a Medicaid payback trust, we will always be able to rescue. It's just, we would like to avoid rescuing, because just like it sounds, rescuing.
He's rescuing.
It's going to rescue it. It's going to take more time. It's going to cost you more money. It's going to be more legal fees. It's going to be more stress. I mean, that's all what we're trying to avoid. Kelly, I see that your hand's up.
Yeah, I just was wondering, like, so we're talking about not having assets in your adult child's name. So let's say Allison turns 18. She's still living at home. Maybe she's taking some classes. Maybe she's got a supported work experience, whatever. But I'm paying things for her. Mm-hmm. I buy her groceries. She lives in my house. Like, right. I'm supporting her, really. Or even if she's older than that, but I'm still supplementing her income because I can't afford it. Is that going to eventually come back?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm going to ask you to put a pin in it, because I'm going to start to address it when I get to the income test. And then it'll make sense, but it's a great question. And it actually, look, the next slide is the income test. So here we go. So remember I said resource and income are 2 different things. Okay, income is, and I'll talk about it in a second, but income is what I'm about to say. And then resources are once it already lands into something like an account, or it becomes an asset, right? So you make this income, but when you take your check and you put it in the bank account, once it's in the bank account, it's a resource. As the check is being sent to you, it's income. Just to give you a distinction between the 2. And remember, the only thing that unlocks or locks the door is resources, not income. Income just decides on how wide the door is going to be open. So, I'll let me just kind of first, like I did with the resource test, I said the first question you really should ask is, what is a resource? Well, income test, and what is income? And there's three sort of categories of income. The one in the middle is the most one that we all understand the most, earned income. Go in, clock out, earn a paycheck. That's earned income. The one on the left is the other one that is, I think people have a pretty good understanding of it. Unearned income. So interest earned on your checking account is unearned income, or dividends, alimony, and more importantly, child support. For any divorced families that are on this call and have a child support situation set up, and then Joey turns 18, and that child support payment continues, right? It's sad, but it ends up it ends up reducing the amount of SSI benefits. But you can actually do something in a divorce that actually preserves it, get the child support, put it in a whole nother special kind of special needs trust, and then it doesn't reduce the benefits. So just problem is specialists are specialists, and so family law attorneys aren't special needs planning attorneys, and so unfortunately, often in a divorce it gets missed, and then we got to come in and modify the divorce to clean it up, and modify the child support order to clean it up, and then again that's reacting, right? Because it could have been done at the divorce level versus after the divorce level, and then dynamics could make that a very strange endeavor as well. And then there's the third one. And Kelly, I think this one will speak to a little bit of some of the things you were talking about. It's the actual receipt of food, clothing, shelter, and things like that other people provide for Joey. And that's what you're talking about. And so the food you buy for her, the free rent that you provide for her because she's going to live in your house, those types of things, they get valued in the eyes of public benefits, and then that will be deemed income, in-kind income, or imputed income. And therefore, Joey's going to show having income, which might close the door. It might not shut it all the way. Even if it's shut, it won't lock the door, but it might impact how much of a benefit you get. So, the strategy here, just on this issue alone, and it sounds and feels counterintuitive as a parent, but kind of understanding how the benefits work, it's just an absolute must do, is once Joey turns 18, you need, and is going to still live in your house, you need to charge Joey rent. Now, the power behind this counterintuitive thought about charging your child with a disability rent seems really off. But when you figure out the power of it, it's brilliant. I mean, it's amazing. So just to use you as example, Kelly, let's say all of a sudden, you got an 18-year-old, and so now you're going to charge rent, and the rent is an all-inclusive rent that includes utility and things, maybe even a food allowance, so you don't have to keep saving grocery receipts and stuff like that. Well, when someone turns 18, I know someone will call me, and so we'll figure that out. But we'll have a lease, and let's say that lease is for $700. Let's just say that's what we deemed was kind of a reasonable fair market. It has to be fair market. When you go to apply for public benefits, you're going to show that there's a lease of $700, which is going to just completely eliminate this in-kind income component to it. It's going to optimize or maximize the amount of SSI benefits you're going to get.
Even if she can't pay it.
Well, she's going to be able to pay it. Yeah, she's going to be able to pay it from the benefits.
No, I mean, but before benefits.
Yep.
Like I just set the lease, hold it in a rear, whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't have to evict her. I just have to have a lease.
You don't have to evict her. You don't have to enforce the lease.
Okay, but I just have to like keep track, whatever. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah. And now here's the real magic. I mean, if you're able to get to this point, this is a tremendous, because you weren't originally ever intending, it never crossed your mind that you're looking to make rental income from your daughter, right? So let's just say it's essentially free money for a moment from the government. So then you're going to take it as the landlord, right? But remember what SSI money was for? Food and shelter. It's restricted money. So shelter, rent, completely within the guidelines. But once the landlord gets the money, that's Kelly, it's her money. And now it's her money. It's unrestricted money. You can do whatever you want to do with it. So you can put it into a savings account where you earmark back to her in a third party special needs trust. But even better, remember at the very, very beginning when I was trying to share my screen, I said I started talking and I talked about private funding instead of public benefits. Now you had this money that you never were going to get because you were never planning on charging rent. Now you have this extra cash that's coming in. Let's say it ends up netting out $500 a month. And now you take that $500 and you go get a second to die joint life insurance policy between you and your husband. And that might result in $250,000, or if you're healthy, it might be $500,000. And then you name the special needs trust as the beneficiary of that insurance policy. And when you die, there's an extra $250,000 or a $500,000 amount of money for her benefit in a special needs trust that's not going to disrupt the public benefits. Right? Like, I mean, that is, when you put it all together, it's magic. Like, it's really, really a huge impact on Joey's life.
You know, Bhavik, I can say our daughter's 32, so we've been through all this, and it is. I mean, it's a weird feeling to be charging your child rent, but it saves the day.
Yeah.
It really does, because then they can still have that income and they're not losing any of it, you know, because you're charging them those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they're 18.
If
they're 18.
You are obligated to put shelter over your child prior to the age of 18. So don't charge rent until they're an adult. But yes. So anyways, I don't know, Kelly, did that sort of answer your questions when you were kind of talking about rent?
Okay.
And okay.
That makes perfect sense.
All right. So then let's shift gears for a moment.
Bhavik, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Oh, you're moving to SSDI.
That's okay. Oh, do you want me to go back? Here,
well, my question was related to SSDI. If Lily currently receives SSDI on my record,
yep,
as a retiree,
yep.
Okay. Do I need to have a lease agreement in place for that now?
No, you don't is the answer. And
okay,
when I kind of talk about SSDI, I think it'll sort of explain why. And it really goes back to earlier on when I was categorizing public benefits as those that are financial need based and those that are not. SSDI is not financial need based. And it's not tied to Joey, it's tied to mom and dad. Like, this is one of those benefits that is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful benefits, one of the best benefits Joey can get. And so many people don't think about it because they don't think of Social Security being there for their kid. Right? So I think this is super, super important. And then I'm going to give you one real serious cautionary tale, because even though it's beautiful, if you're not on top of this, it can actually cause a potential disqualification of Medicaid. And so you just I want to kind of walk you through it. First of all, Social Security benefit is not, SSDI is not restricted money. And since it's not limited to food and shelter, you don't need to spend it on food and shelter. It can accrue, but you got to be careful. You don't want it to accrue too much because you still might need Medicaid. Most people that get on SSDI is income to Joey. So it's probably going to close the door. for SSI benefits. But that's okay because SSDI is superior. It's more money, potentially, and less restricted. So you could stop the rent stuff if you wanted to. You could start to get the SSDI money and spend it. And then whatever's left over, if it's not being spent, enough of it's not being spent, you could dump that into the ABLE account so that you don't disrupt Medicaid. How do you get SSDI? First of all, SSDI is an automatic right. It's not something that you can choose to opt in or opt out. And that's very important because when Joey becomes able to receive SSDI, any parent's naivety of it or lack of applying for it doesn't waive it. And all of a sudden, if it is discovered, and I've seen it many, many, many times, all of a sudden Social Security will say, oh, Joey was supposed to be getting this payment for the last 3 years, so here's $47,000. And that's a problem. Because now Joey has $47,000, and we've just lost Medicaid benefits. So you really want to get on top of it. And so when do you get on top of it? You need to understand when Joey could become eligible for SSDI. Again, 2 things have to be proven. One is Joey had to have been disabled prior to the age of 22. Okay, I think that's going to be the easy one to meet. And then the other is that Joey's parent has to be eligible to receive Social Security. What does eligible mean? Well, it means in one of 3 ways. Either the parent is deceased, the parent is disabled him or herself, or the parent is, in Lynn's case, retired. And as long as one of those three things have occurred, the eligible parent status test has been met. And so then, as long as Joey was disabled prior to the age of 22, this is automatic. This happens. Now, if Joey is able to work and makes, let's just round down, makes more than $1,000 a month, Joey will lose this benefit because it's deemed from Social Security's perspective that Joey's not disabled. So you would have not met that one of those prongs in those 2-prong tests.
Wait, could you say that again?
So even though SSDI is not financial need based, the definition of disability when it comes to SSDI has an extra component built into it that is the ability to earn. And if Joey is earning money, has a job, and makes more than $1,000 a month, that's not the exact number. That's just the number I always say in these presentations so you remember it. Then Joey is not deemed to be disabled anymore, and so he didn't meet this test. He's not going to get SSDI.
Okay, so it changes from 2,000 to 1,000 then.
No.
You're talking to SSI. I mean, if you're talking
I'm talking
SSI to.
Yeah, and not to pick on you, Terry, but that's why it's confusing, and I want to be very technical.
Yeah.
The 2000 test is a resource test. It deals with unlocking the benefits to public benefits that are financial need based.
Okay, and these aren't.
Test here. In other words, what I'm saying is Joey could have $1 million in the bank, not be able to earn income, and still receive SSDI.
Okay.
That's why I want to make that distinction. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay, so what does Joey get if it's SSDI? It's going to depend on the status of parent eligibility, meaning which eligibility trigger occurred of those 3 ways to be an eligible parent. And if it's based on disability or retirement, like in Lynn's example, then Joey is entitled to a half of what Lynn is receiving. So if Lynn was getting $2,000 in Social Security, Joey's getting $1,000 a month, unrestricted for the rest of his life, as long as Joey's not capable of having a job earning him more than $1,000. That's a powerful benefit if you think about it. And then if sorry to pick on you, Lynn, but when Lynn passes away, the amount goes up, because if Lynn was getting $2,000 a month, Joey's now entitled to 3/4, so Joey would get $1,500 a month for the rest of his lifetime of unrestricted money, provided Joey cannot earn more than $1,000 a month in a job.
And Bhavik, does it go like when my husband Tim retires, if his benefit is higher, does Lily switch over to his then?
Yes, but it's not automatic. You're going to need to reach out and make sure they do that.
Okay.
But yes, you can't get it on both, but you get it on the higher of.
And they get that benefit for the rest of their life.
As long as Joey can't he's not able to work and earn more than $1,000.
Okay.
And it doesn't reduce the parents' benefit.
No, it does not. However, there is a total Social Security cap of $4,500 for the family cap. So it wouldn't reduce the parents' benefit. It would reduce Joey's if you're at the cap. But when you die, your piece would go away. The cap got larger. Joey would get more, if you're at the cap kind of range. All right, so let's put it all together in this little example. These are just random numbers, so it's just for illustrative purposes. Helen has been disabled from birth, meaning prior to age of 22, and was receiving $720 a month in SSI money. Okay? Helen's father, Earl, retires. He receives $1,000 a month from Social Security. Helen now begins to receive half of $500 a month. The receipt of the SSDI money is deemed unearned income to Helen, which will kind of get the door to close a little bit, and it will reduce her SSI amount from some amount, like in this arbitrary example, 480. So there is a scenario in the world, in this example, where Helen is going to receive $240 of SSI and $500 of SSDI. Now, if Helen's SSDI was closer to 700 or more, it would have just eliminated the SSI and it would have just been SSDI. I just used this example to get a little bit more complex to let you understand there could be a hybrid if the numbers were that way. Generally speaking, if the SSDI amount is above $800 or more, then it's going to shut the door, not lock the door, shut the door. And that's really important, because the door analogy about how wide it's open is really only talking about SSI monthly cash flow. It's not unlock and lock is the only thing that's relevant for Medicaid. So the door can be shut, meaning no SSI payments, but unlocked, meaning still Medicaid eligible. Which is why SSDI is not likely to disrupt Medicaid. And then, and here's a kicker, once Joey is receiving SSDI payments for 2 or more years, Joey then automatically becomes eligible for Medicare, which is way better health insurance than Medicaid. You know, Medicare is just as good as our group health insurance to some extent. So that's the promised land. If you're following this along, is you start with SSI because you don't have an option to do anything else. You get Medicaid eligibility. So now you have SSI and Medicaid and sort of phase 1 of adult Joey benefit life. Then as Joey's parents get older and either die, disabled, or retired, you basically convert your SSI to SSDI. So then you have Medicaid and SSDI, and maybe you keep Joey on the Cobra plan for a couple of years. And then after that couple of years expires, you get Medicare. So you get Medicare, SSDI, and Medicaid. And that trio of public benefits is what I call the promised land. Right? That's the optimal flow of benefits. And then our job is to make sure we don't lose it. We don't do anything unintentional or intentional to disrupt the promised land. Right? That's sort of the foundation of public benefits in a more simplified way than I think it gets explained a lot of times. So I'm going to stop for a second. One, it's 8:00.
Oh,
But two, I want to stop and make sure I don't have to be anywhere. So I'm happy to stay on and keep talking. I just want to make sure people have questions they can ask them at this point.
Bhavik, did you say that if you've been on receiving SSDI for 2 years, you're automatically enrolled in Medicare, or
Well,
if
you still have to do something, but Joey's now eligible for Medicare.
okay, but what happens if you're on SSDI but not on Medicaid?
Well,
Does that make,
I mean that
does that make sense? What I'm saying?
you can not have Medicaid, but you should try to get on Medicaid.
Because it can be a secondary.
Yeah,
insurance.
you want Medicaid because look, Medicare is superior health insurance. And when you get superior health insurance, you're not really going to rely on Medicaid for the health insurance piece, though it will still help supplement copay and other things. But you want Medicaid for what Medicaid will really bring its value for, which is a lot of unknowns in Joey's life after you two are gone. Like potentially group home care or in-home care or respite care or other in-home services or worst case nursing home care, whatever. But that's what Medicaid is going to pay for. And those are big ticketed items. And that's the real benefit if Joey is in the need of any of those services. So you always want to get Medicaid and just put it in your pocket. It's a payer of last resort. You can have, even if you have private health insurance, you should get Medicaid and just always have it, eligibility. You don't want to go chase eligibility after you need it. You want to get it and have it ready for when you need it. I'm all about proactiveness in that kind of sense. And so, so that's why I call the promised land Medicare, SSDI, and Medicaid. Any other questions on sort of what we've talked about?
So, from a strategic perspective, Bhavik, like, kind of comes down to, is your child going to be able to have a job that covers their ability to live or not? If they're going to have a job that covers their ability to live, they're going to have benefits. The door's going to be locked, but it probably won't matter.
Right.
But you're just not going to know that until whatever time you know it. So strategically, it's better to keep the door unlocked, even if the door's closed. It's better to keep the door unlocked, really, as long as you can, because who knows what will happen at any time.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
And if you're in what I call the most common place, the gray zone. I always have these funny words for all these things, but the gray zone is not knowing if Joey's going to be able to have a job or not. Today, fast forward, trying to predict the future in 20 years. And as you learned earlier, one of the tools for special needs planning is probably to create a special needs trust to leave assets in it. But if Joey's going to be working, I don't know if I want as much restriction that comes with a special needs trust. So that's what I say is most of the population in this conversation is this gray zone. I mean, the ones that you already know, I mean, you put the plan in place and you just go, right? But it's the ones that you don't know for sure. And so there is a unique type of special needs trust that's called a spigot special needs trust. Just like the word sounds, spigot, water spigot, turn it on and off. That's the exact tool for the gray zone. So that you're leaving your inheritance to Joey. And if Joey is going to be on benefits at that time or even later past that time, you turn the spigot off and it becomes a special needs trust. And if Joey's earning enough to earn a livelihood and have some independence feeling and all of these wonderful things we're going to want for Joey, then you turn the spigot, on, and it just becomes a good old-fashioned regular trust for Joey. So you just supplement. Maybe Joey can't make $100,000 a year, but maybe Joey can make $25,000 a year, and might need an extra amount of money from the trust to help supplement some lifestyle, right? And so the spigot special needs trust is the ideal sort of vehicle for that gray zone, which most, I think, families I talk to probably live in the most,
Yeah.
But just so you know, there's always a way. There's always a strategy.
I feel fairly certain that you already told me that I had a spigot special needs trust now that you're saying it.
I'm more than fairly confident.
Pretty certain that's what I have. Yeah. I haven't done all my jobs yet because I know Allison has a custodial account and also cash value life insurance.
Yes, but you know what? She is not 18.
She's not. No, she's not. She's only 14.
So we got 4 years to fix
I'm
those.
not in trouble yet.
So,
I'm a lawyer and I still have to have Vivek tell me exactly what to do because I'm not this kind of lawyer.
but you don't get your heart operated on by your foot doctor,
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Okay, so then I know we're past time, but I want to go through one little slide just to it's a perfect way to we've talked about benefits, we talked about the door, we talked about how to unlock it, we talked about what happens if it closes and trying to avoid it getting unlocked. I want to just leave you with 5 general things that I constantly see, and I guarantee you that someone that's listening to me, I hope the value of this is tremendous. If one of you is accidentally doing one of these things, and I've stopped you from doing it, right? So these are common pitfalls that inevitably walk down the path of the uh-oh moment and the door's locked. So I want to just get ahead of it and let you know what these things are to make sure you do something about it. So remember I went through the exempt assets and I said it was an exhaustive list. So if I didn't say it, that means it's a countable resource. But every time, even though I say that, people are like, well, what about these custodial accounts? Or what about 529 plans or most accounts, those types of things? Well, I didn't say those things. So that means they're countable resources. And so you've got to really start thinking about the trickiness is when you're in the gray zone. Right? You want to do all these things to kind of help, but the good news about at least the 529 plans is you could roll those over to an able account if you have to. So that's the good news for that. Custodial accounts, just don't do them. You can put them in just your name, get them out, and then eventually, if the gray zone shows that she is not going to need public benefits, you can just give it back to her later. I mean, it's just that simple. I hate to be super practical about it, but that would be a way better outcome than a custodial account, and then she turns 18, and you need benefits, and now you can't get them for a little while. So that's just one I wanted to talk about. The other is unstructured beneficiary designations. And what I'm talking about is, if you have a job, you go to job, first day at your new employer, you go through annoying and boring orientation. In my case, people that join my company, they go through 3 days to 7 days of it. It's fun. But in that onboarding orientation process, you talk to the benefits person, right? And hey, we got a 401k, sign up for it, or we got this life insurance, you get that. And then they give you all this paperwork, and people don't think about it. And who do they name as beneficiaries? They name their spouse, followed by who? My kids, right? That's a problem because now if you die, and depending on the order of death, Joey's got money coming to him. The solution is instead of naming Joey for a portion of it, name the special needs trust. And then problem solved. You don't have the then we've kind of already briefly talked a little bit about this third one, directing. Oh, no, we didn't talk about that. It's the fourth one. But the third one is, well, I'm not going to give Joey anything. I'm going to give everything to his sister, Emily. All right. And Emily's just going to take care of Joey, and Joey won't have any assets. So no disruption in public benefits. I mean, it sounds sweet. It would have worked. Emily loves Joey, by the way. So it's perfect. But you know what the problem is, Emily? Emily fell in love with Steve. Steve's a real character, just a jerk. And Emily got divorced with Steve. And now that half the money that was with Emily to take care of Joey is with Steve and his new lady friend. Right? Or Emily was driving one day, wasn't paying attention, got in an accident, it was her fault, and got a lawsuit against her. What my point is, even if Emily was well-intended, loved her brother, and would do the right thing, which is what my parents all tell me Emily will do, there are too many unknown variables that could impact those funds that were really intended to take care of Joey. And that's a big problem. So instead, name the special needs trust. And if you have to, name Emily to be in charge of the special needs trust. So you're still giving Emily the ability to care for her brother and play a role. But now if any of those bad things happen from Steve or that car accident, money's protected for Joey. So just something to think about there. The fourth one is the one I was talking about that we briefly touched upon in the past, is like the uncle that provides the money unintended. I mean, sweet. I mean, thank you, uncle and grandparent. That's awesome to leave Joey money. But when they do it without a plan, which is what I meant when I said as parents of Joey, you can't afford to just sit back and see what happens. You need to have this conversation with the family. You don't have to be presumptuous about it, but you've got to be educational about it. Mom, dad, I don't know what you're planning on doing, and I'm not wanting you to do anything you don't want to do, but if you happen to leave assets to your grandchildren, I need you to leave it to Joey differently. Right? Like you have to have the conversation. It's a must. You cannot allow private matters to just remain private in this arena. You've got to have a conversation. And you've got to then put a plan in place, which might mean you're having to create a special needs trust so that they can leave it to that special needs trust. Or if they're willing to create one of their own, fine too. You can have multiple special needs trusts for Joey. One that you created with the terms you want, and then the one grandma and grandpa created that had the terms that grandma and grandpa. And then the last one is no planning at all. And I don't mean special needs planning. I mean estate planning for you. Because if you don't do an estate plan for you, the state in which you reside in at the time of your death has written an estate plan for you. That's called intestacy, if you want to get your Latin geek on. And essentially, the intestacy rules in each state say, when I die, and if I don't have an estate plan, then my estate is going to go half to my surviving spouse, if I have any, and the other half's going to go to my children. If I don't have a surviving spouse, it's all going to go to my children, which is a problem. It's another uh-oh moment. No different than the 401k beneficiary designation. That's what we have to avoid. That's why, unfortunately, you don't have the luxury of procrastination or just sitting there and burying your head in the sand. You have to address these things because not having an estate plan is literally an intentional act to disqualify Joey from public benefits. Especially now that I told you that, it becomes intentional. It might have been negligent originally, but now it's really, really a thing. So that's my final word of fear. To get everybody to take action. But any questions, any other thoughts you have? I just kind of wanted to walk through these things because we see our families do these things all the time. And if they don't catch it, it's a problem.
So, Bhavik, with earnings, income earnings, like for Lily, if she's able to get a job down the road, how do I ask this? Do I just, like, I don't know that she'll ever make a level of earnings that she could be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
So,
but self-sufficient is a higher standard than public benefit eligibility.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because it only takes $2,000. I mean, that's not self-sufficient. I mean, self-sufficient is probably like 30,000 a year. I mean, like, or, something. So okay. It's a real disparity between those two. I really wish that threshold was even at poverty level, let alone far below poverty level.
Okay. So is that why a lot of people manage their children's earnings or their adult child's earnings to stay within a certain dollar amount?
Probably. Probably, and that comes a big philosophical debate, right?
Right.
Like, am I here to earmark the total optimized public benefit opportunity? And then I have to balance that with like fulfillment in Joey's life, independence in Joey's life. To me, it's not even a fair comparison. I know which one I'm going to pick any day of the week is the independence and fulfillment.
Right.
Equation, but that's a philosophical comment. Really, I mean, there's no right. I have my opinion, but I don't think anything's right or wrong. What people do, they got to do what they got to do. But yeah, speculating to my response to your question, Lynn, but I think that's probably what they're doing is they're playing that game to make sure.
I see.
They get that. I don't know that for sure, but that I've seen that for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I want Lily to be fulfilled and her life to be engaging and I want to make sure she's provided for. So
right. And that's where the private funding really comes in to give you the most flexibilities you can get. If you have the ability to do just the best that you can, that's all the ask is, right?
Right.
But to be thinking about things like joint life insurance and things like that can help provide that private funding. It really opens up, it removes that conflict almost. It really opens it up to being able to have more flexibility to make the choices that are the best for Joey and not so public benefit dependent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes absolute sense.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to see some familiar faces for sure.
Thank you so much for being with us. You really had a real concise way in which of presenting this to us. I've listened to a few of these, and you definitely made this something that was very comprehensive and understandable because this is a very emotional thing for parents, right? Trying to make sure they have this all set up correctly for their child. So I had a question for you, but I know most people aren't going to be interested in this. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions or if I could bring this forward. If anybody else wants to get off, they can. But with having a daughter who's older, who is in a relationship with someone and they wanted to get married, okay, well, they can't do that because if she does, I mean, she also has very severe medical issues.
Is there a guardianship Carrie, in place?
Pardon me? Pardon
Is
me?
there, in your scenario, is there a guardianship in place or no?
No, she's very, she has, she has, she's had 45 surgeries. She's has spina bifida, so she's a lot of medical issues. Um, but she's met this guy. They want to get married, and they weren't able to because she would lose her Medicaid benefits and her hospital bills alone. I mean, even if she was under his insurance, would be astronomical. And he, unfortunately, has a very good job and has a house and things. So had to have a marriage ceremony without having a marriage license. And I've heard that may change in the future. But for right now, it's really an atrocity that she would obviously lose that because then that joint income would come into effect with all her benefits, as far as I know. Is that correct from your understanding?
Yeah, absolutely correct.
Yeah, yeah. So, that is a really hard situation for young people that want to move on to that, but know that if, their medical bills could be up to $500,000 more than that a year. And so therefore she would be, I mean, that would, and not that only that, his house and everything else would be counted, as a joint situation as well. So do you see anything like that? I had heard that may be changing to some degree and that some states don't even follow that. But Missouri, of course, does. Do you know any insight on that as far as change or?
I don't believe there is any pending legislation to change it. So all it is talk still. So I tend to, it doesn't get real until there's something on paper with somebody being asked to approve something. And
Absolutely.
I haven't seen that yet.
Have you seen it I've heard it's in other states. Have you heard about that? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah. It's not in Missouri. It's not in Illinois. It's not in the states that I practice.
Okay.
So, it's been a while since I've looked last to know which states do what. So I really wouldn't be able to know, it's going to move in that direction because if you think about most laws that are being passed, they are all tending to help pro sort of disability independence of some sort or a public benefit, like the ABLE account and the Secure Act for allowing 401ks to be stretched out over the life of a disabled lifetime versus having to take the money out in 10 years, things like that. So, I mean, I see a trend in that direction, but I don't see
Not
it
there yet. Yeah.
soon.
Yeah. It's very disheartening, when you have kids get married and get a marriage license, get married in the church, and you can't get married in the church because you have to have a marriage license, right? Because blah, 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 on and on. So people were saying, well, go to Mexico. Well, guess what? Mexico just has the same thing. Most countries have that same law. You have to have a marriage license, right?
I mean, the problem is, not problem, like the extreme step to prevent that from happening based on the current situations would be to get a guardianship. Because then you would have to absolutely approve it.
Okay, say that again?
If before she met this boy, you were her guardian, that wouldn't prevent her from dating the boy. It wouldn't prevent her from spending time with the boy. But for her to get married, it would allow you to insert yourself to either stop it or to get the court to approve it.
Well, yeah. And we're 100%
someone from just going and getting a marriage certificate.
Yeah. And we were 100%. Big wedding, whole thing. She's very independent, very successful, but she's disabled. And so it would just change that whole situation. So
that's why it's an extreme step to get.
Sure, I understand.
Making sure the public benefits worked out, but that's that balancing act again I was talking about.
Our whole thing would be the special needs trust because then that's her money. She can, so that's what we've done. But anyway, thank you for answering that question. I kind of thought that was going to be your answer, but just wanted to check.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it. Sorry to go a little long. I guess
no problem.
No, we really
Thank you
do
very
appreciate
much.
Yeah, we really do appreciate your time, and definitely we'll make this available to our other families, and hopefully we'll have some of our families come to you that, to help them be more secure in their walk with their child in this journey, and help them sleep better at night too.
Yeah.
Recording that can be sent to me.
Pardon me?
Pardon me?
Can this recording be sent to me as well?
Of course. Yep. Absolutely. We definitely will do that. And like I
Start
said,
making
we also will send it to
my
our other families.
mannerisms and my, when you listen to yourself, you always sound way worse.
Well, you sounded pretty darn good. Let me just tell you
You
that. But I'll send
did.
you the recording anyway.
I appreciate that. This is a topic I talk a lot about. I mean,
It
this is
was good.
like 300th presentation on this topic. So,
Oh my gosh. Well, you have it down, that's for sure, Bhavik. So we really appreciate it. Okay.
thanks for inviting me to it.
Thank you. Have a
so
good
much.
evening, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye,
You
guys.
enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.
God bless you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.